Hey, it's Dan Mulhern. Before we jump into Diacardia, let me share 2 ways you can optimize your learning and your listening on the program. The first is that if you're able to, get on YouTube and watch this there. It is wonderful to be able to have both audio and video, and I've designed this so that there are visuals. I'll do my best to picture them for you if you're in your car or on a hike or elsewhere, listening to Spotify or Apple or wherever. But if you can, get on YouTube. Secondly, and maybe more importantly, if you can, bring your Diacardia partner with you. Diacardia is the podcast for pairs, and I will share ideas for you, but I will also give you wonderful opportunities to share with a partner. I envision this as one in which co-founders in the business setting or partners in a marital setting or a relationship setting would participate in Diacardia and listen to it. But it's also perfectly fine to do it as a one-off with a friend, an adult child, an aging parent. It really doesn't matter. You can experience it in any important relationship. But it's best if you can to have that partner with you. Hey, here we go. All right. Hello, everybody. It's great to see people with me. Wonderful people who I know care about relationships so much, care about their partners so much in work and at home, and you've all contributed so much to me. So super grateful for that. So I'm going to start with a picture, because a picture, as the Stones said, tells a story, don't it? And I'll make sure I got the right picture up. I think you got it right. So a picture of 2 cables, and they're wound around each other. And this is kind of how we typically do conversation with others, is we wrap around each other. I love this image of the 2 cables, one in the green sheath and one in the yellow sheath of plastic, because they contain so many cables within them. So when a Jackie is speaking to a Daniele, there is the outside surface that they each see of each other, but inside there's so much more happening. And what happens is we tend to wrap around each other, sometimes interrupting, but often experiencing things inside our own cable that we want to get into the conversation and to wrap around each other. And so today will be more of Diacardia for those who've been. Welcome to those who are here for the first time, of unwrapping that conversation a little bit so that it slows down and you can really appreciate the difference and the beauty in the other person, the confusion sometimes, whatever it happens to be. So today, the promise, kind of get something off of my screen. There we go. The promise for today is an increased sense of freedom as you listen, that you're able to listen to your partner in a way that just isn't as hard and doesn't feel difficult and doesn't feel hemmed in, and a decrease in the burden of whatever kind that you carry as you speak. So the opportunity to receive from your partner somebody who will carry a little bit of the weight with you that may be on your shoulders. It may be inside the relationship and it may be outside. I'll share more of that. And then thirdly, for both yourself as listener and yourself as speaker, thirdly, increased patience with yourself and the other, so that there isn't urgency and pressure. And we know, just as organisms, that when there's urgency and pressure, when you have to make a decision really fast because a car is coming at you, when it's 1 minute before a Diacardia presentation and I'm managing 4 apps, the urgency is so great. we don't function well with urgency. We go to fight and flight. It naturally happens. So patience becomes such an extraordinary gift when we can slow things down and unwrap the cables a little bit. So this outline will be familiar to those of you who've been with me before on Diacardia, but this will give you a sense of what we'll do is that we'll start with 2 minutes just of centering breath that helps us all to move away. I can feel myself coming down from that urgency of making sure I'm on course to start this diacardia. And then a couple of minutes of gratitude, sharing with your partner, and then some thoughts from me on the topic of the day, which is of holding back, the idea of holding back and what we hold back or hold within. And then I'll kind of set you up for a conversation. So, as the intro said, diacardia is best to do in a pair, but I'm seeing a real pattern of people coming by themselves, and that's totally great. And if it's useful for you to, jot some notes or have some mental notes, or a partner can join you later, totally cool. The breathing you can do on your own. The gratitude, maybe it's a time to write. The big part of this is the 20 minutes to chat with your partner. And so in that part, it's just a chance to perhaps write, perhaps start an email, or just think about what it is you want to share. And maybe think a little bit about how you involve your partner. How do you get them to show up with you? So that's the idea. And then I will basically pause the YouTube in that long stretch of 20 minutes. I'll be here through that time, and then we can reconvene at the end. Okay, so breathing, I always start with breathing. It really is magic. It is pretty amazing. And that attentive breathing brings these kind of results. I thought I would just focus on the two that are bolded today. That first of all, just intentional aware breathing lowers blood pressure. And it sort of made me wonder, like, blood pressure, like what really, why is that important? And it's just important for so many things. It's the most prevalent risk factor for cardiac conditions. And in a sort of meta study of studies about breathing, it's been demonstrated to have a modest but significant effect on blood pressure. So if you don't already have a breathing practice, it's a great idea to think about it. And there's a million online that you can follow. The fourth point on there, it also reduces stress hormones like cortisol. And cortisol has the same kind of impact on the heart over time, that when you're secreting a lot of it, it can increase blood pressure as well, and pressure on the heart. It suppresses the immune system when you have too much cortisol. And of course, we all know the feeling of too much cortisol in our system and what that does to us. So it's associated with mental health issues too. So enough about why, getting to the what of it. Where's the cursor? There it is. So what I'm going to suggest we do is that you pace yourself with 3-3-6 breathing. So it'll be 3 breaths in. I suggest both in and out through the nose. So 3 in, 3 hold, and then 6 out. And we'll do it 6 times. And because the mind always, always, always wanders, it's what it does. It is created to wander, to scan the landscape for issues externally, internally, up and down. One way to just focus is just see if you can notice hearing your breath. So as you're doing this 3-3-6, just notice if you can hear it. And when you drift away, you drift away. You can exaggerate it for a second, like if you want to just hear it, but just see if you can pay attention to it in whatever sound it's making. So I'll get you started, and then maybe I'll just keep going. I'll lead you through. So through the nose, in, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, way out now, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in, 2, 3,
hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in, 2, 3, hold, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more. See if you can hear your breath. In, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And a big out breath from me. Cats, those are also soothing. Jackie's got a lovely one on her lap, and Daniele's getting 2 for the price of 1, which is awesome. Okay, so that's a way of calming ourselves. And before I explain the gratitude research and exercise, I just want to say that back to this anticipated conversation where you've been holding something back, the breath work is so important, both in calming oneself to be able to say, I've been holding this back and I want to share this, and especially helpful in the listening part to be able to continue to breathe and calm yourself when you may want to jump in, interrupt, steer the conversation, tell your partner it's not exactly right, etc. So the breathing is not just a wonderful long-term way of developing great mental and physical health, but also a way when things get tense to be able to literally draw in air, draw on that practice, and to have a sense, okay, I can hang in here and there's no huge urgency to this. Okay, the gratitude practice. Many of you know the research already. Some of you have been with me and know that this 5-to-1 in green and red and the picture of these apples is an indication that there's research both in the marriage space and in the business space that sharing 5 positive emotions, 5 positive thoughts for every 1 negative thought is associated with high levels of thriving, that they can predict marriage sustainability, that people will not end up in divorce by watching a 15-minute conversation. They can predict it with 95% accuracy. And this practice of gratitude, of positivity, of appreciating what's good and virtuous is really key to that. So what I want to suggest to you is just a 2-minute practice, a minute each, and I'll watch my clock for you. If you'd like a stem, and you might need a minute to think about this, so I'll say it and then give you a couple seconds. I'll drone on so that you can think, but you might use this stem. I appreciated when you heard me out about. So yesterday, Jennifer and I had about an hour and a half long drive, and the day before, she had told me that she had a business trip. She was going to Paris, Brussels, and London. And I had seen it on the calendar and said, I thought we'd agreed that we were going to talk about foreign travel and maybe I would go with you. And so Jennifer really heard me out about that. Um, it was also a great conversation, honestly, because we unwrapped the wires so that she let me speak for a good deal of time. And then she shared back what she had heard. And then I was able to ask her, what is going on? Because I know it wasn't ill intended, but why hadn't you shared? And that gave her the opportunity to explain what had been in her head. So, Jen, I say publicly what I said to you yesterday, thanks so much for hearing me out. I didn't want to be what felt like whining and complaining, but I was feeling hurt. And if I hadn't aired it out, we wouldn't have cleared it up in a way. So that's the idea behind where we're headed. And so maybe you can draw on a past example from the past day or the past week, or maybe it hasn't happened in a long time. Maybe there was a really special time where something was eating away at you about the relationship. It didn't have to be about the relationship, by the way. It could have been about your parents or about work or about a career decision. And a time when your partner just really heard you out and let you unwind and figure out either probably both. Why was something getting at you so much? And what options did you have to either think about it differently, understand it differently, or choose to operate in a different kind of way around that? So that's kind of a long stem, but let me give you then 2 minutes each. And you can think about, you can share what you're grateful for. So if the first person would go, that would be great.
Who's, am I the first person? Who's the first person?
Oh, we're doing this with partners.
Oh,
Uh,
okay, got it.
yeah, yeah. So it might be something you would just write a little bit about to share with your partner later. And about another 5 seconds. So you've switched, hopefully now. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So one of the things that I love most about gratitude work is that the first benefit is just it uplifts us, and the psychological research is just nutty about the ways in which it benefits us. But the other thing I love about it is that it really does set us up to deal with hard issues, that when we lay a nice foundation of positivity, it makes it so much easier to hear each other out. So today, a promise and then the research. The promise, as I shared with you, is like more of a sense of freedom as you listen, less burden as you speak, and more patience with yourself and the other. And I just want to share a little bit of the research about this. It's pretty fascinating that in the field of couples, sharing burdens decreases cortisol between partners. Again, that activated hormone that taxes the system is great for emergency situations, but not great for everyday life. It activates what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's the part of your nervous system that's the rest and relax function. And who doesn't want that sometimes? And healthy communication also increases immunity and speeds up recovery. So it's pretty amazing how the seemingly soft and psychological aspects have really hard physiological results. In the business research, you might have seen a couple of weeks ago that a Gallup survey from 2024 came back out, And it reported that 20% of people report that on the day before at work, they felt a lot of loneliness. So 1 in 5 people is feeling lonely at work. When it comes to employees who feel engaged, those numbers plummet. And when employees feel heard, loneliness drops 39%. So we know that when we're heard, it makes a tremendous impact on our emotions, of course, and our physiology as well. So that's the research. There's kind of a big caveat about the research that there was a time when there was a really strong Freud-inspired belief that catharsis, like if you were angry, you just vent like crazy, or if you go into a trauma experience, something Christina knows a ton about research-wise, that it actually wasn't like a cathartic release, but oftentimes it would end up repeating the pattern. People would become more familiar with their anger and stay angry. So venting alone just doesn't do it. It's just not always cathartic by any means. And the key to it being healthy is being heard. And there are two aspects of this being heard. One is that it just strengthens the key social bonds. So if I come home from having had a terrible argument with somebody at work or an encounter with somebody, a client who just seems stubborn and doesn't want to do what they should do, the mere experience of sharing that with Jennifer, being able to vent, as we would use that word, creates the bond with Jennifer that's a stronger bond. Of course, so that connection empowers us. But the important part then is to work our way through the causes and the options. Otherwise, we're just in patterns. And in marriage work, in couples work, we're in perpetual issues that simply repeat themselves over and over. If we don't over time get to why is it so upsetting for me, and or what is it that you're doing, so that we can unpack it and not repeat the same thing. So in this case, then, in what we're talking about, the listener's job, today and in general, is to create the calm shelter for the work. So when Jennifer could listen to me in the car, that though I felt like I would be a whiner, though I was afraid things wouldn't change, so why raise an issue if it's not going to change? The calm shelter that she provided was enough for me to relax, not feel like I had to push really hard or soft pedal everything on the other hand, but to be able to just say what it was, which allowed her both to respond, but also for me to think through why is this upsetting and what am I doing or what can I do different? What options do I have? So it's really such a huge gift to create the calm shelter for the other person to listen. So here's what I want to talk about for a few minutes, and then I'll invite you to have a conversation if there's something you've been holding back, whether with your partner or somewhere else. And maybe those of us who are singles will just talk a little bit in this period if you want and have a conversation. Daniele and Jackie, who are together, can have a paired conversation. Christina may have found Steve somewhere in the house and they can pair. Okay, so the distinction for the day, it comes from the work of Ron Heifetz, his leadership work, and it's really about difficult, what he would call adaptive leadership, like we need in our political space today. That's all I'll say about the political space. But we're holding back is withholding something important unconsciously out of fear. It's an automatic, unconscious move to stay safe by staying silent. So there's a lot of people, for instance, one would imagine in the Trump administration or CEOs who are dealing with him or foreign leaders who hold back out of an unconscious desire to stay safe. Now, I contrast that, Heifetz would contrast that with the idea of holding steady, which is much more conscious. So now we're withholding something consciously in a strategic pause. Some of that may be to gauge, your mental state. Like, are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Are you tired? That's the HALT acronym. I'll say it again because I think it's worth hearing from I think it's from Alcoholics Anonymous. HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Okay, hold steady. That's not the time to deal with, Trump or your spouse or your challenging child or your aging parent who's getting more ornery. When you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, hold steady. Don't get into the weeds and into the mess. But holding steady also means not just looking inside, but assessing maybe somebody else is a better messenger for this. Maybe somebody else should speak up. Maybe there's a different moment in timing when it can get through. Maybe there's a ripeness to an issue. Maybe it's just not ready to be talked about because there's been a trauma, there's been a child shooting, another school shooting. Like maybe that's not the time to do it. And factoring in the receiver's likely receptivity. Are they hungry, angry, lonely, tired? Are they in the middle of a job pressure where maybe now is not the time to look at this? So I am looking at my own notes and not sharing my notes with you, but maybe a quick second just to recap that holding back is when I don't say something with Jen, mostly because I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want pushback. I don't want to have an argument that we've had before or a discussion we've had before that won't get resolved. I'll sound like just a complete baby about it. And so I won't feel good. But holding steady is saying, am I talking to Jen 5 minutes before I'm doing Diacardia? That's probably not the right time. Am I doing it before she's catching a plane in an hour? Am I doing it when I know this week is the worst week in the world, right? So then I'm holding steady, making a conscious choice to time things out a little bit. So what I want to invite you is to this topic for Diacardia then, that it could be something that you have held back. And it could be something you've held back from a boss, a parent, a friend, a coworker, a partner, or your partner you're with today. It's funny how these words are so image filled, so metaphoric, that something could be pressing on our heart, could be pressing on our mind. Like I'm weighed down by something. I can't get it off my mind. It's that sense that something is within and is holding us back. So maybe you formulated something that you'll do with your partner today or do when you see your partner again. So a few ways in, and this may be especially helpful for people who don't have a partner with them, is that you could write. I've learned this teaching at Berkeley more often to give people a minute to write. Half the room usually prefers introversion, and people like to think things through. As opposed to those who just want to jump in. So one or both of you may prefer to write. Second, decide whether something is ripe. You could do it for yourself, but you could also ask them. And if not, choose to hold steady for now. I think one great thing about relationships that we don't always take advantage of, I'll just say I don't take advantage of, is like Jen and I are forever. We've been together for almost 40 years. We're together. We don't have to figure everything out before lunch today. Life creates a sense of urgency all the time, but there is time to think things through. And difficult issues, give them time to think. Give yourself permission to think. If you both want to talk, set a 10-minute timer and then switch. And so my suggestion for the speaker is just one thing: use I statements. If Jennifer says she says, I observed, I feel, I thought, I noticed, I've been thinking. That's about her. And that's a cue to me. It's not about me. Even if it's something she's observed about me or felt about my behavior or thought about what I'm doing, in this case, it's her observation, feeling, thought, and I can listen to it. I could give examples, but you know what I'm saying here. And my tips for the listeners, especially if you're going to get into topics that are more challenging for you and for your partner, right? Use I statements yourself. For the listener, um, repeatedly notice that you have thoughts, feelings, opinion. Just like when you're breathing and you realize I'm not hearing my breath anymore, I'm somewhere else. Notice that you have thoughts like, I might think Jen's crazy about that, or that's not true, or she always says that, or she thinks that, and she always thinks that, or she's way better than that, or she's too hard on herself, right? I'll generate tons of opinions. So if you're listening, just notice that you have that and then hold steady. And then when you have heard your partner, share back what you just heard. I was just so complimented when Jennifer and I were about to cross the San Rafael Bridge, which half of you know where that is. And sometimes I remember exactly where I am when I hear things. You probably experienced that too. And she said, "Oh, I didn't ask, did I get it right? And is there more?" But and I said to her, "You got it right. You got almost everything I said. And there isn't anything more I want to say," which was an example of just extraordinary listening on her part because I had spoken for quite a while and she recited a perfect summary of that. So those are the tips. So raise a topic. I'll go back to the question. I've been holding back on something and I'd like to share it, whether it's about your partner themselves, about a friend or a coworker, but you just want to clear some space. And then those tips for speaking. Make sure to share what it is that's your observation, your thought, your feeling, and for the listener to just let them have it because they're going to have a chance to work their way through it. So I'm going to stop. So I just want to invite you all to share diacardia with people, whether it's people who are in really good and solid and wonderful relationships or really struggling, or both at the same time, and to subscribe, leave comments, or email me at dan@leadingx2.com. That would be great. I think that's kind of it. Jackie, Daniele, we had an interesting conversation among us about both holding back and holding steady. And Tanisha kind of took us into the space of forgiveness and apology as well. And Cynthia as well. So is there anything you want to just share in sort of closure on the topic that might be on your hearts and not hold back from saying?
I think I'll share that there's a part of me, despite the fact that this is maybe, I think, our third one, that is a little apprehensive every time this comes up. Like Jackie mentioned it a couple of days ago, and I was like, oh man, we have things to do Sunday, or I want to take care of the house or whatever. And so I'm like, I always think like of the alternate universe where I skipped this thing. And I'm always glad that I didn't skip it because I always get something good out of it. And I think it's good for us. It's nice to connect with you. Today, specifically, like most times, I feel that it's a great incentive using your prompt to get us in a space where we're open and listening and want to talk about our relationship, which is something intent wise we always have, but with the schedule and work and everything else, you don't always make time for it, especially when you're trying to make time for other things like going on a date or watching a movie or being intimate or whatever. So I think this space is really important, not just for the time we spend with you on the prompt, but for the time it kind of opens up, usually for the rest of the afternoon for us. So yeah, I appreciate everyone's input, and I appreciate you, Dan, for putting it together because it goes beyond just what you've created for the class, I think.